19 years old or so, I would go with friends, ride their horses, do things with them and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking, it's time for me to get my own. Why, you know, I'm living at home, I'm working, what am I waiting for, you know? So I had another friend, and we went out looking for horses. And the first horse I bought was they called everything a quarter horse. Didn't matter if it got its head up, didn't get its head up, whatever. You'd say, what kind of horse is that? Oh, that's a half quarter horse, or this or that. So I bought this 5-year-old horse. And I'd go riding with my friends and stuff. But in the meantime, we had the Holtz family for customers. Holtz has had a tack shop. Bernard Holtz, that's Bill Holtz's dad, was a saddle maker of fancy silver parade saddles. We're talking big time stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He repaired stuff for the Lone Ranger, for Paladin, for Gary Player golf stuff. This guy was a master. He could do anything with leather, and he could engrave, and we sold him fuel up there. Many, many times down through the years, I'd stop to see Bernard Holtz, and of course Bill was there and some of the other family. Bill Holtz is 3 years younger than me, and they had the Morgans. Geez, I'd go up there and they had the Morgans. Most beautiful, well-kept, smart horses I ever saw. I had my quarter horse. It's kind of like a Bronco Billy type thing. And I said, one of these days I'm going to be able to afford a Morgan, and that's my next step up, okay? In the meantime there, this 18, 19 years old, we're delivering gasoline out to the Switzler farm, D.F. Switzler, Carrolltown, Pennsylvania. Talk about a real gentleman, nice guy, just wonderful man. I think about him every day. He was born in 1899, so, you know, here I was, pretty young kid, and he was about 60 years old or so at the time. I would deliver gas out there, and if he was at the farm, as soon as I was done with the gas, I'd say, what do you have in the barn? Because I heard about this super horse they had by the name of Trophy. So at 18, 19 years old, I was introduced to Trophy, who was literally the sire of all the top horses that the Holtzes had in town. They showed these parade horses, and they were trophy horses, and man, could they go. And very fortunate, D.F. Swizzler really took time. If you had an interest, he would talk to you for hours. He would explain, he would show you. He was a true mentor to me. And he would talk about the bloodlines, and he would talk about Trophy came from the government, and he bought him in 1951, even though he had other Morgans before that. And he educated me about how well Trophy crossed with the Ruthven blood, Dr. Ruthven from Michigan. And before I even had Morgans, I knew that Trophy, because Betty Ann, Nancy Ann, and all these really good horses, they were sired by Lipid Moral Ash. Okay? And I always make that, explain that. We're not, I'm not talking lipid horses all the way, but for some reason, the stuff that Dr. Ruthven had, and he called it Ruthven's, Nancy Ann, Betty Ann, Mildred Ann. Man, when they were bred to trophy, that's where you had Emerald, Jade, Award, Crystal, name all the top ones, and you lay their papers down, and he explained, and he said some things work and some things don't. And so honest, and always glad to see you. And you know how you run into somebody and you say, boy, I'm glad I ran into you today. And he was busy because they had a Buick dealership up there in Carrolltown, which is a little town. Then he did farming, and the barn out there at the Switzler's farm, it's been torn down for years now, but it was about 100 years old, a big, massive barn, which meant it was built about 1850, 60 in that time. And there was an alleyway or a shed, I don't know what we want to call it, bottom of the barn. Remember, big old farm barn. And there was this big alleyway down there that you could put 2 tractors in there and go back and forth if you wanted to. And what they did, they watered their horses out of an old bathtub, which a lot of farmers did, but there was fresh water coming in and going out. And they had these really big, massive box stalls in there. Probably when they were built, they were for draft horses. But it was so solid and nice. And some of the horses were in these big stalls. Trophy had a big stall halfway down the alleyway. And it was a thrill to go out there, and maybe they were feeding or doing something, and he would let the horses come out one by one, and they'd come up, and they'd have to come up this long shed or alleyway, I'm calling it. And when you'd see Trophy come out, he'd just sit back like this, and he comes up like this and puts his show on, and just as a very good disposition in a nice way. I remember D.F. Switzler saying, just don't worry about him, he won't bother you. And he went over and catch him and ring more and say, you know, he's fine. But you would be in there and they'd open the door for Trophy and he'd come out like this. Anybody that saw good Trophy horses know what I'm talking about. Then when he was done drinking, he would turn and trot back down this big long alleyway, and it was so obvious, and we always said trophy hawks. When this horse was going away from you, and by the way, he was barefoot most of his life, okay? Trophy just went away like this, shoulders going, back end going, and it's so easy for him. And I remember and they were all chestnuts. The same thing with Nancy Ann and some of the very, very good mares up there. And they didn't have any, they weren't being shown. They were fed excellent, they had excellent care. But the big thrill was going out in the spring when he was getting the babies. And I was very, very fortunate to see like Award, Cupid, Crystal, Emerald, Jade, Air, all these super horses before they were even shown or much were done with them. And I was impressed with them. And of course, Bill Holtz would start some of these horses on. Now remember, Bill might have been 20 years old or younger. But D.F. Switzler had a lot of faith in Bill Holtz, and he would send them into Bill right in town. They had a barn and a setup where they could train horses. And so I was exposed to trophy horses before anything else. And the funny thing is, D.F. Switzler and I were talking one time, and I said, boy, if I could ever afford a Morgan, I'm going to get a Morgan. And he said, well, make sure when you do, you get a good one. And he was a common sense guy. Said, well, if you go out and buy a Morgan, and he wasn't trying to sell me one, he was explaining. He said, it won't cost any more to put shoes on. If the bed comes, it won't cost any more. If you feed it, it's the initial, maybe you're going to pay more money up front. And that made a lot of sense to me. Geez, if we saved up some money and said this is going to be the horse money, and that's what we did. And also, I had a lot from Bill Holtz and also D.F. Switzler explained the bloodlines and why this horse moves a certain way, or a disposition, or a look, or why it's high-headed like this, you know, and